This is a transmigration power fantasy manhwa where the MC is a nobody, but with the power of Riz and a bit of knowledge of the future, he becomes a top dog of the academy. Yet, despite having one of the most generic premises in manhwas, would you believe me if I say that this one is actually pretty good? I know you might think that every transmigration, reincarnation or regression manhwa is absolute trash and generic. I do, however, agree with you, but only to a certain extent, because I also believe that in this pile of trash a gem can be found, and that's exactly what I've done. A dumpster dive to find Extra's Academy Survival Guide, a manhwa that is worth reading. First of all, let's take a look at our main character's completely unique design. This is Ed, or rather the person our main character gets transmigrated into. And unfortunately, before the main character becomes Ed, Ed was a villain in a video game called Sylvania's Failed Swordmaster. A video game our main character was obsessed with and knows the ins and outs and every little detail of it. Just like me with Persona 5 Royal. You know how it is. Of course the main character has to have some kind of knowledge or advantage. The problem, however, is that, as I said, Ed was a villain, the first villain of the game, a petty villain everyone forgets about after he gets expelled from the academy's dormitory. Imagine you get isekai'd into Persona 5, but instead of becoming Joker, you get transmigrated into Kamoshida. Although Ed wasn't a groomer like Kamoshida, the story states that he tried to use his nobility to harass Tylee's friend. But even after getting punished, he still decided to take revenge on Tylee, but got caught by Princess Penia, who has a special ability that can help her detect lies. And that's what kicked him out of the dorm and got him disowned by his family. So now that the main character has been transmigrated into Ed, he has to deal with the consequences of the original Ed's actions. He quickly accepts his fate because he's actually pretty good at adapting to new circumstances, so he plans to quietly graduate from the academy and live a comfortable life. He realizes that next month's tuition is gonna be a problem for him, but the bigger problem at hand right now is food, shelter, and clothing. So he decides to survive on his own in this forest by first making a shelter. He soon realizes that Ed's body is weaker than a 5th grader, as his stats are super low even for an arrogant noble. But even after solving his shelter problem by setting up a clumsy tent, he faces a bigger problem. The person in charge of getting him expelled from the dorm suddenly shows up and starts a tantrum. So to get out of this situation, we bear witness to Ed's first ever strike and his ultimate skill, which is Riz. Of course, he already knows about Penia's ability, so he decides to be absolutely honest so that he can earn her trust. Otherwise, it'd be game over for him because she can get him expelled from the academy. He decides to help her by giving her the answer to her examination, but because of that, Penia, who originally couldn't solve her exam and would have ended up in class F, became the top student of class A, and that's where everything starts. Ed decided to help her so that he could survive in this world, but by doing so, he also changed the original story of the game, making his knowledge of the future useless because Penia is no longer in class F, and that could drastically change the story. Except that's what would have happened if Princess Penia had no personality. In the game, she'll be known as the Princess of Benevolence because she has a strong sense of righteousness and wants to achieve her goals on her own. So even though she found the answer to her exam because Ed helped her, she decided not to use it because she didn't find it on her own, and as a result, she ends up in class F just like the original plot. Who knew the secret to making a worthwhile story is to give your characters personality? Ed is dead set on not straying from the game's original plot because he knows how dangerous this world can be, so he needs to use every little advantage at his disposal. There are world-ending characters and events in this world, and someone like Ed, who only has basic magic skills, has zero chance of surviving these scenarios. So the most logical way to survive is to get as far away as possible from the main character of the video game, Tylee. When I first read this manhwa, I was really frustrated by how determined Ed was to stay away from the original plot, but now that I'm rereading it again, I understand why he tries so hard not to change the story because his life depends on it. Except the fact that he's still in the academy has a butterfly effect, and we all know that he can't run away forever. Anyway, he runs into Yenneker, one of the most important characters who plays a big role in the game, and this is where the manhwa does its cute little foreshadowing of what's to come or what to expect from its characters. She might look naive and kind-hearted on the outside, but in Ed's eyes, she's the final boss of Act 1. The manhwa pulls off this little trick on several occasions, and honestly, It works every single time. We see a new character. Ed shares some details about them and why he needs to stay away from them because this character ends up like this, and you're sitting in your room wondering how on earth this little tiny girl potentially initiates the end of the world. So you get curious and have no other choice but to follow the storyline to see how that happens or if Ed is gonna change it or not. The manhwa has a pretty good pacing. We gradually see how Ed builds his shelter and upgrades his base, how he restores his face in the academy, and how much he trains to become stronger. None of these happen overnight, and I really appreciate that the manhwa takes its time to build Ed's character. What I like about his character is how embarrassingly weak he starts, but instead of whining, he adapts, trains, studies, and plans for the future. But don't think that this manhwa has a slow pace because so much happens in the arcs of this manhwa. Interesting and engaging arcs that so far usually revolved around one of the waifus of this world, which is arguably the best thing about this manhwa. To be completely honest, this manhwa has a lot to offer. All of the premise is generic, the execution is flawless, the main character becomes more interesting as the story moves forward. But one of the best things about this manhwa is definitely the female leads. We have the cutesy wife material Yenneker or Janika, whichever you prefer, wink wink, the bold and feisty Lortel, which is the best girl in my opinion, and the OP nuke wizard who can one-shot anyone in this world, Lucy. All three characters are written pretty well, especially the best girl, Lortel. She is confident and doesn't trust others, but as the story goes on, we'll see how she grows and begins to trust and believe in Ed even when faced with danger. Lucy starts as an apathetic and indifferent omnipotent mage who is also really lazy and loves sleeping in Ed's tent or cabin, until she's forced to deal with the strongest magic, emotions. And then we have Yenneker. She's just Yenneker. This might sound weird, but the art style of this motto is delicious. Look, I can't explain it, but what I'm trying to say is that this manhwa has an amazing art style. It's a kind of art style that makes me constantly take screenshots because holy shit, this looks good. It has one of the nicest art styles I've seen, and it's pretty consistent throughout the story. So yeah, great characters, great pacing, and an art style that makes me want to set it as my phone wallpaper. But what makes this manhwa work is that it gives you exactly what it promises, and it gives you with so much love and care. Extras Academy Survival Guide isn't a revolutionary manhwa, but it understands what makes a story work. It's hard to describe the premise of the story without making it sound like absolute slop, and truth to be told, when I started reading this one, I was expecting another forgettable power fantasy with a quirky twist, but instead, I got a genuinely fun ride with engaging writing, lovable characters, a beautiful art style, and a promising plot that kept me hooked. So yeah, that was Extras Academy Survival Guide. If you've already read this manhwa, let me know your favorite character and why it's Lortel. Also, feel free to recommend me any manhwas you want in the comments. Just reply to my pinned comment and I'll make sure to check out every single one of them for a future video. So subscribe so you won't miss it. But hey, thank you so much for watching my video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and as always, see you in the next one.